about them Irish?
I can't take it anymore. I need a national championship.
This is the Four Horsemen podcast.
And we are back. The Fighting Irish start their playoff resume campaign again after another big marquee victory against the Virginia Cavaliers at home. This is our second time doing this because I'm an idiot and I forgot to record. So, I'm joined by Steve. We are the Four Horsemen podcast, and we're going to get into this week. So, Steve, what do you got for us?
There is definitely some bright spots. Obviously, on the defensive side of the ball, we were incredible. Overall, a quality win. Overall, very satisfied. I don't think I was particularly worried at any point, but there's definitely some red flags and some alarms to attend to. We're going to get pretty analytical on this podcast, so if you're kind of a statistical nut, especially the way that Dylan is able to break things down, he kind of has like a Rain Man kind of view of how this works. So yeah, there's good, there's bad, there's ugly, and I think all things considered, hey, you come out with a top 20 victory at home, you're 3-1 on the year, still within the top 10, still within the playoff picture. So I'm satisfied, I'm happy.
Yeah, no, I put out a tweet last night saying, good teams win, great teams cover, and the Irish covered the spread. It was 11.5 at the time of the game, and they covered 50, or they scored 15, or they won by 15 at least. Although the offense felt like it scored less than 15. This was another game kind of like Louisville, New Mexico, where at the start of it, it's kind of ugly. The fan base is losing their mind, and then by the end of it, it's kind of a blowout. It's a tough win. It was a tough game. I think we underestimated Virginia a little bit, but our score prediction was fairly accurate. We gave it 38-13. I believe you called it to be a very close game at halftime. In fact, we were down at halftime. But thankfully, we had the defense there. It was an unbelievable performance defensively. Watching the game, I figured that the team would make those adjustments at halftime. That Clark Lee and Coach Kelly would. The defense is just too good. Basically, what happened is the Virginia quarterback was mobile, and he was making a lot of good throws and a lot of third down throws too. And a lot of the first downs that they were getting, they were kind of cutting us through the field is just soft coverage, zone coverage, short passes that we were getting, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards per play. So I assumed that we would kind of game plan for that schematically in the second half, and we did excellently. The defensive line was just unbelievable. I'm sure everybody at home was just so enthused with the way our defensive edge rushers announced themselves today. But yeah, from a fan's perspective, it's a good win. It's going to be a feather in the cap of this year in terms of getting back into the playoff. And yeah, I think that's kind of it. Do you have anything else on the game to say before we kind of break into the stats?
One thing that is kind of a letdown is that we went into the half down 17-14, not the end of the world. We can make adjustments. Obviously, we did. It was more so that we did have the ball with under 2 minutes left, and we basically, that's another failed 2-minute drill. Obviously, the marquee one being at Georgia last week to potentially win the game. Came up short there. Came up short against Virginia. There tends to be, I guess, a feeling of panic anytime there's a big moment. And we obviously, we Notre Dame is a team that fights and gets to the point where we want to be in the big moment. So how this is going to shake out going forward, it's like trying to square a circle, and that's why there is definitely a lot of concern. But all things considered, I think we're still in a really good position, and we're still, like I mentioned before, still in the playoff hunt. And I think the implications for this year are pretty big going forward in terms of a program standard, in terms of recruiting and the whole nine. But I think again, just to kind of repeat on my opening comments, I'm satisfied, but satisfied doesn't mean thrilled.
Yeah, no, for sure. It wasn't a perfect game by any means. It felt like we were struggling, especially going into the half down. But they made the adjustments they needed to. The offense was miserable, but the defense definitely, saved our ass on the day. I think Virginia can do a lot of help for Notre Dame as the season goes on. We talked about this last week. They could win the Coastal, which is their division in the ACC. And basically, if Virginia is a 9-3 team in the ACC championship game, lose to Clemson or whatever, it looks good for Notre Dame. You're playing a runner-up in a conference, a ranked team. Hopefully, Virginia can stay ranked. There's no point in saying it's because this week they might fall out of the top 25. They probably will, but that doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of at the end of the year where they are. At the time of the game, it was a ranked win, and that's gonna be huge. Hopefully, it stays that way. Virginia can do a lot of help for Notre Dame. Hopefully, they can play Clemson tighter than 14 or 15 points, because that would make us look even better. But overall, Virginia did a really good job showing up. Their quarterback was ready to play. They ballsy as shit with the onside kick. I had tweeted, I said, you can tell that what playing Notre Dame means to every program. It's everybody's Super Bowl. And you see that. I mean, the year we played Clemson, that was the biggest game they've ever had. It wasn't the South Carolina rivalry game. The Michigan games, Michigan's two highest sellouts are against Notre Dame. We're everybody's Super Bowl. And when you go for an onside kick up 4 at the start of the second half, it's ballsy. You want to win that game, and I just got to tip my hat to Virginia for playing a really good game, better than we thought. But overall, I think our prediction was fairly accurate on the game. We kind of have that theme going this year with accurate predictions. Georgia was fairly accurate. I mean, we got the the result wrong, but it was a close game, which we kind of thought it would be. So just digging into the stats, total yardage, which isn't the biggest stat in the world, but they actually outgained us by about 16 yards. Most of that came from the pass, and that's the difference. At the end of the day, Virginia had 334 passing yards. Notre Dame had 165. And when you're losing at any point, or when it's a close game, you should be passing the ball. That's what's so shocking about the statistic. It's not like Notre Dame was up 25 or 21, 28, something big, and then just decided to run the ball the rest of the game. It was a tight game, and we couldn't get the passing game going, and that's really concerning. I know we had questions last week about whether it was Ian Book or whether it was maybe the play calls. I think I'm leaning more towards execution. I think the play calls are there. We'll get into more of Ian Book in a moment. Yards per pass, 7.8 for Virginia, 6.6 for Notre Dame. This is the second week in a row where Notre Dame's yards per attempt is just getting too low. You got to get that up higher. You're going to have more success when you're throwing more down the field. But something that we're going to bring up is the rushing game. Notre Dame had 157 yards on the ground. Virginia had 4. And this kind of brings up two things, something that we brought up last time before we recorded, so we have to repeat ourselves a bit. But Notre Dame's rushing game bailed them out. When the passing game wasn't working, they could run the ball, and they found efficiency there. But on the flip side of that, Virginia ran for 4 yards and still hung in with Notre Dame for most of the game. So it's a really interesting, kind of almost paradoxical situation we have here. But for the fun of it, I looked. Georgia ran for 0.1 rushing yards per attempt. Notre Dame 4.2, which actually isn't really that great. We're averaging 4.5 on the year, which is 60th best in college football. And I know the narrative was that we had a really good game on the ground, but it was 4.2. I'm going to let you jump in on a particular point you made last time about Tony Jones.
Yeah, so Tony Jones did outperform the team average. He had 7.3 yards, so he obviously was playing up to, I guess, senior running back expectation, thankfully. I think as for the rest of the team, obviously we're missing our top end talent, namely Jafar Armstrong. But it feels good, the fact that we were able to move bodies. I mean, there was one particular play where our entire offensive line had literally pushed their front 6-7 yards downfield before there was any contact. So that feels nice to know that we can turn that on when the time is right. at least against inferior opponents. If we're playing superior opponents, it'd be nice to also have that balance. Obviously, passing is the most efficient stat in the game, the most efficient vehicle on offense in order to get into the end zone and make plays, make your team competitive. So only 4 yards for Virginia, but they were passing the ball quite well in the first half in the soft zone. That made them competitive. That's what put 17 points on the board for them. Now, on the other side, the flip side of the token, obviously you saw Notre Dame was a little bit more balanced, and I think in a way a little bit more unpredictable. I think the second half adjustments for Notre Dame were because Virginia was so predictable. They just basically said, we're not throwing the ball. We're not running the ball, rather. We're throwing the ball. That's where, 8 team sacks and 5 turnovers come into play. So I think there's still definitely added value to running the football and being remotely balanced, but it's got to be a 60-40, pass to run split. And I think in order to have probably the most efficient offense possible, and for 60% of the game, if that's going to be the most important part of the offense, I think there absolutely has to be improvements made on our end, because 165 yards on 17 completions, that is just not satisfactory to make us competitive, frankly, in the college playoffs.
Yeah, no, that's well said. The passing game clearly wasn't good enough, but where the game was won was the turnover battle. Notre Dame or Virginia turned the ball over 5 times, so we took away the ball 5 times, and Notre Dame fumbled once on the Fink punt return, or the muff. And then we were outpossessed again, not surprisingly, where the game kind of seems to be a theme this year. And it's something that you kind of brought up. There's a tweet going out there from Pete Sampson. I'll let you kind of dig into that one for our viewers.
Yeah, certainly. So we, just to make ourselves informed and knowledgeable about all things Irish, we're constantly sending each other tweets and DMs and of information that we see out there kind of floating through the Twitterverse. And Pete Sampson, he's notably one of the big time ND writers. He tweeted something, a couple of some statistics that were awesome, some statistics that are very alarming, all in one single tweet. So it's like the definition of Notre Dame football. Some things are great, some things are like terrifying. And one of those statistics that stands out here, especially as we're talking about possession and the possession battle, is Notre Dame is ranked 123rd in the nation in regards to offensive plays run, not running plays, but total offensive plays run. So, now there's some upside to that, because there's plays like Avery Davis or Javon McKinley, who had those, nice catch and run touchdowns that ended a drive in 20 seconds. Okay, that's great. That's the high end of that statistic. That's a positive. But then, the nuance of it is that there's plays, there's drives like the Irish backed up inside their own 5-yard line. They get it to a third and mid-range, I think 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 after Chase Claypool's screen pass, and then we just kind of panic and we're not able to get out of our own 10-yard line. So now we have to punt, and then now we're losing the field possession battle. So, 3 and outs can't be a thing, and unfortunately at this rate, we have way too many currently as it stands.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. Third down conversion, failures to kind of sustain long drives. There's a lot there that the offense needs to work on if we're going to be a playoff team, because part of it is we're going to have to look good against some bad teams, because we have a lot of shared data points with other college programs. We play the SEC, we play the ACC, we play the Pac-12, we play the Big Ten. I think the Big 12 is the only Power 5 team or conference we don't play this year. So basically, the conference champions in those conferences who are going to try to get into the playoff are going to have a common game with Notre Dame. Like Ohio State or Wisconsin will have played Michigan. Clemson will at some point play Virginia. Virginia wins out. Somebody in the Pac-12 is going to play USC and Stanford. So it's really important that we, beat the living shit out of these teams so we look better in that common game. But I think we should kind of move on now to our 4 horsemen. It was a really big defensive performance, so I imagine we're going to go defense heavy here. So Steve, I'll let you give your 4 horsemen.
Yeah, notably on the offensive side of the football, obviously it's got to be Tony Jones. 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 7.3 average, moving the ball downfield. So that's good. He had a couple of big runs. That was just, I think, really balanced out the game and made us less predictable, which in the end, on top of obviously an astonishingly stout defense, is what put us over the top. Julian Aquara, Khalid Kareem are the next two, 3 sacks and 2.5 sacks respectively. I mean, they were absolutely just bullying the offensive tackles all day long, and they had some help from the interior rush. I mean, Kurt Heinisch, Myron Tagovailoa, those guys were getting in the mix as well, and they were definitely putting some pressure from the interior. So, the entire defensive line unit was incredible. But those two notably, obviously, we both believe, and it's of the common belief, that they're going to be, first or second round picks. So I think you can truly see the difference there. And then had to go with Alohi Gilman. He wasn't flying all over the field making a ton of tackles. I think he only had like 2 tackles, 1 assisted. But then he had the interception, and I just think overall he adds a nice calming effect to the secondary. And his ability to get into the box and let Kyle Hamilton kind of play as the roaming center fielder, basically just daring these guys to throw the ball deep. Again, I think is an added value that you're not going to see on the stat sheet. So defensive heavy, all things considered, one hell of a day.
Yeah, no, well said. How about that Kyle Hamilton kid, man? He is going to be an absolute superstar for this team. He's a ball hawk.
I think he's going to be a top 5 overall pick. I mean, he is absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, he's got everything. He's physical, long. I mean, he makes some good tackles. He comes downfield. He covers well. He goes for the ball. And he's a freshman. He's a true freshman. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on as this program moves on through the years. But I think we're pretty much in mostly agreement here for Horsemen. For my 4th Horseman, I went Kurt Heinisch. I wanted to give the D-line its credit it deserved because it really did win the game. Kurt Heinisch had 3 tackles, half a sack, and 2 tackles for a loss. Just a monster game. I mean, credit to Virginia for actually attacking our secondary, which I've said on the show numerous times is a top 5, if not the best secondary group in college football, and they went after us. They had some success there, but eventually it quieted down because the defensive line ate them up like some monsters. 3rd, I went again. Tony Jones Jr. listed his stats. He outperformed the yards per attempt. He was good overall. 3 touchdowns. Ran hard. I think with Tony Jones, consistency might be the thing. Sometimes he can kind of disappear on you, and then sometimes he just trucks you for 8 yards on second down to make it a 3rd and manageable. So I gave him 3rd star of the game, or 3rd Horseman. I thought he was really well, played really well. 2nd, Khalid Kareem, 3 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hurry. Man, were they just all over the place. That D-line, all of them. But Khalid Kareem, like you said, that's a NFL prospect, probably going to go on day 2. Although some people will say he could be actually the better of the 2 players on our team. And then one for me had to be Julian Aquara. I'm going to read you guys his stat line. I've never seen anything this crazy, I think. 3 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hurries, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery. That's illegal. That's not allowed.
It was like watching Khalil Mack against like a high school team.
Yeah, a Canadian high school team. It was like watching Chase Claypool's Canadian high school tape. Just not fair. Yeah, what a monster performance. Just everything about that defensive line. I mean, you held the other team to 4 rushing yards. Like, what more do you want? That is something that's, I think, sorted itself out in the Georgia game. I know our first 2 games, people thought they were running on us too much. There was those stats out there. Look, our defensive line is plenty fine. Our linebackers are really coming into their own. I mean, Awuso Kamara has been fantastic. Drew White has had another great performance. I don't recall seeing Bilal too much on that field that game, but that rotation there, it's going to work out, and I think our defense is going to be fine. So if we can move now into, I think, our favorite segment our new favorite segment, at least. Juice in my nuts. Steve, take us away.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, obviously there's a handful of great defensive plays yesterday that really put some juice in my nuts. But the one that was unequivocally, I think the really the play that turned everything around was Jameer Jones coming off the edge, absolutely pulverizing the Virginia QB. Ball squirts up in the air, falls right into the hands of Myron Tagovailoa Amosa, who is Tua's cousin. So Tagovailoa for Heisman, except not Tua, if you get what I mean. And yeah, able to run that back inside the 5-yard line, and then we're able to score the go-ahead touchdown. 2 plays later? So that was once that sack fumble happened, and then we were able to pull ahead 21-17. At that point, I knew, I was like, nope. This Virginia team is screwed, because now they're going to have to keep dropping back. And I tweeted it on early in the game because I saw that the Virginia QB, for what it's worth, he was staying in the pocket making some great throws and plays all day, but he seemed to not have as much urgency or awareness as necessary. And I tweeted out, this much I know, at some point in this game, Julian Aquara or Khalid Kareem is going to murder this QB, and it's basically what happened in this particular play. Was Jameer Jones with the sack force fumble. But I mean, again, we can drool all day about our defensive line performance because it was just something else.
Yeah, no, mine's a defensive line performance as well, although what put the juice in my nuts was actually for gambling reasons. So my play was the first sack fumble, delivered, recovered, and forced all by Julian Aquara. Here's why. I was trying to bet the line for Notre Dame, Virginia. I wanted to bet Notre Dame to cover, but I missed the timing. And for the next about 5 minutes of the game, I was betting online. And for those of you who bet online, the odds change a lot, like a lot. Odds change, the line changes, and I couldn't for the life of me get a line that I liked because, of course, Virginia starts off the game. They score a touchdown. The line gets low. I want to bet it, but then Notre Dame scores really quickly, so I can't get in the bet. And then Virginia starts marching down the field, and I just had a good feeling. The line, which was originally 11.5, moved to 7.5 when Virginia was like at the 50, and I locked in the bet. I put in my money, Notre Dame to cover 7.5. And then the very next play, Julian Aquara just destroys the quarterback. We recover the fumble, take it into their territory, and I felt at that moment that we were not only going to win the game, but I was going to make some money. So the juice in my nuts moment was definitely that. It got me really hyped, and I really think it set the tone defensively for the game. Overall, with Virginia, we're going to see how good of a performance it is in the upcoming weeks, depending on how good Virginia really is. But what you could see with Virginia is that they're improving. There was a graphic, right, with the coach who took over. They were rebuilding. They were a 4-win team a few years ago. They were 8-5 last year. I think 9-3 is really realistic for Virginia. I think they can win that division. But it was a scrappy game. But again, at the end of the day, you covered. It's going to look good. Hopefully, it's a ranked win. And I think you just kind of have to move on and accept that this team has some flaws, but we have a lot of strengths too.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, Bronco Mendenhall is a very good coach. If I remember correctly, he was part of that BYU team that came into Notre Dame Stadium a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure if they beat us or if they just gave us a really tight game. But, I mean, Bronco Mendenhall, good coach. Virginia, again, let's hope for them to come up with 10 wins this year. That'd be great for us, obviously. And yeah, I think it's time to kind of get into a conversation, and this is a late night observation that I had made, and this, what really, I was just thinking back on the game. I was playing NCAA 14 at like 1 o'clock in the morning because my fiance was working the overnight, so just playing Xbox by myself, and the my offensive line in the game could not block anybody. I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off, just trying to clear the pocket and make a pass. And that's when kind of something like just kind of clicked in my mind simultaneously. And I thought about the particular drive, especially when we went 3 and out. As Ian, we were dropped inside our own 5-yard line on a great punt, and Ian Book, I think it was like a run play. Then the second play was a screen pass, and I referenced this before to Claypool, who shook a guy, got a couple of yards, got out of bounds. So 3rd down and 5, 3rd down and 4 from inside your own 10-yard line, and Ian Book drops back, instantly panics, and then tries scampering, and the draw play just doesn't work. He's gobbled up, and then we have to punt from our own end zone. And I was like, I think if you look back in that game, there were some really, really good throws made by Ian Book. There was some points in the game where he stayed in the pocket, and especially there was a few plays where he would scramble, then go back into the pocket and reestablish it. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the improvement that I wanted to see. I'm sure if you look back, it's on 1st and 2nd down. On 1st and 2nd down, Ian Book is a very high quality quarterback. And this, I think, is probably the most damning conversation that we're going to have over the course of the year, and the most damning statistics that we're going to encounter as we kind of progress through here. And Dill, I'll let you take lead in just a moment. I think that this Notre Dame team, in terms of talent, offensive line, skill players, defensive line, linebackers, especially secondary, it's a playoff caliber team. I don't think that Ian Book is the playoff caliber quarterback that we need, because the 3rd down performance is just not cutting it. I'm kind of just introducing everything, and there's a lot of thoughts on my mind, and I'm sure as you spell out some of the statistics here, because you did a deep dive, I think there's going to be a lot of good points that are about to be brought up.
Yeah, no, it was your genius late night, because we were talking about Ian Book's performance, because we were pro Ian Book. Even after the Georgia game, we were pro Ian Book, but it seems very obvious now that he's not performing at the level he needs to. And you put out an idea there. What about, is it 3rd down performance? So I looked into it, and we're going to get into the stats, but basically that's it. The nut of it is it's the 3rd down performance. So if I can kind of just set the stage a little bit, last week we compared Ian Book to the quarterback for Virginia. I did a QB comparison pregame. They were very similar. Book had a better adjusted QBR, but the Virginia QBR raw was better. And I said they're similar, but Book should still outperform him because I have faith in the opponent adjusted QBR metric, and he didn't at all. It was definitely outperformed by the Virginia QB, and I think this is going to be a problem moving forward. So if you just look at the 2018, 2019, just basic stats between the two, you'll see that one's better than another. So QB rating, which again is not the best stat, but unfortunately we do have to use it because there's not much else out there. 154 in 2018 for Ian Book, 151.9, which looks pretty close, but that should also tell you why this stat is not the best. QBR in 2018, Ian Book was a total QBR, which is adjusted for the opponent, 80.1, which was 12th best in college football. He was a playoff caliber quarterback last year. That's why we were a playoff team. Because without him, if we would have been stuck with Wimbush, I'm pretty sure we don't win 12 games. This year, his QBR is 69.9, nice, but also not nice. It dropped basically 10 points. He's now 42nd in college football, which is slightly above average, which isn't good enough for a playoff team. Yards per attempt, very similar, 8.4 in 2018, 8.3 this year. The difference is he was landing at 68.2% of his passes last year. He's at 63.0. So why is he not performing as well? What is going on? What's the difference? And Steve hit on it. He had an epiphany last night. It's the 3rd down. It's the 3rd down performance, just in general. And I don't think this is on the play calls or the coordinator, because it's the same as last year. It's the same people, same personnel, same playbook, I imagine, with some adjustments. So here's, the numbers. Bear with me. I'll try to make this, of course, as easy as possible to understand, because not everybody is on the same development of statistical analysis yet. So on 3rd down in 2018, Ian Book threw for 68.5% of his passes, which again is really good. 8.8 yards per attempt, really good, especially on third down. You want to be stretching the field more. 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. That's a good ratio, especially on third down because you're likely to pass it more. And then he had a rating, I know not the best stat, but it's all we have, of 173.5, which was better than his normal rating. So on third down, Ian Book was better than he was on any other down, probably because he was passing the ball more. If you fast forward to this year, the same category, third down, Ian Book is throwing at 47.1%. That's a 21% decline. He's at 4.4 yards per attempt. Again, that's literally half of what he was throwing last year. He has 0 touchdowns to 1 interception, and his rating is 71.9, which is 102 points lower this year. That is absurd. This is not normal to have such wide disparity in statistics from one year to another. But it gets a little creepier. So I looked at not just down, but down in distance. And I looked at 2 distances, third and anywhere between 3 and 7 yards, so third and short range. Ian Book this year, 42% passing, 5, can't read my handwriting, 5 yards per attempt. Again, still not good. And a passer rating of 56.3. That was, this year. Last year, he was 77% passing, 9.7 yards per attempt. Again, 5 this year. 199.7 passer rating. That's just the difference. That's 140 passer points difference between this year and last year. And I'll let you jump in, Steve.
Yeah, and just to kind of highlight on that, in the fact that he's not stretching the field. I mean, and some of this was on Chris Fink as well, but there was a particular third and intermediate, I think third and 6, third and 7, something along those lines, which is the exact statistics you're citing. And Ian Book checks down, and not necessarily that checking down is a bad thing, but he checks down in the slot to Chris Fink, and I think he had ran a 5-yard route on 3rd and 6, and then the guys are, defensive backs are right there to make the hit, and then now it's 4th and 1, we have to punt. So, third and again, I keep harping on this, but third and mid-range inside your own 10-yard line, you need 4 yards, 5 yards to move the sticks, and then again, just now it's, if you can get out of your own 10, now you can really open up the playbook. And we can't even make a 6-yard pass with Javon McKinley, with Michael Young, with Cole Kmet, with Chris Fink. With we have all the weapons necessary. So we know that the play calling is pretty decent, and I just think that in his mind he is so desperate to make the best play that it's paralysis by analysis at a certain point where third down pressure gets to Ian Book like no other quarterback that I've seen. And this has become so alarming because as you're citing these statistics, I didn't even know these numbers, and you're citing them to me now, and it's giving me more of a panic attack.
Yeah, and it doesn't get better. The next one I looked at was third down and more than 6 yards to go. So the last one was third and mid-range. This is third and long, or mid-long. So 3rd and 7, 8, 9, 10, and whatever. Last year, 61.4%. So a little bit of a decline, but you would expect that on longer downs. 8.4 yards per attempt. That's really crucial because it means he's actually throwing the ball down the field to get the first down. And a passer rating of 174.1. This year, 46.2%. Again, that's a huge decline. 4.5 yards per attempt. That doesn't make sense. You're not throwing the ball far enough to get a first down. And a passer rating of 68.9. And I know I've criticized passer rating for not being the most accurate stat, but when you have 105 passer rating difference between this year and last year, we can assume that that's bad. We can assume that there is some accuracy there. It might not be the most perfect statistic, but when you are that much of a disparity between last year and this year, it's just not acceptable. So to prove Steve's hypothesis, I then looked at first and second down this year because, as I cited earlier, the third down statistics for Ian Book this year were awful. But Steve said he's really good on first and second down. So is that true? On first down, Ian Book is throwing at 63.4% of his passes. That is good for 9.8 yards per attempt. Amazing. He's throwing the ball down the field. He's got a 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and his passer rating is 180.9. That is really high. That is last year caliber, if not better than last year caliber.
It's very efficient.
On second down, he's throwing 68.8%, even better, with a yards per attempt of 10.9. We're stretching the ball down the field on first and second down, and his passer rating is 181.3. So on first and second down, he is very efficient. He's very good. On third down, we see a drop over 100 passer rating points. We see yards per attempt cut in half when it should be increasing. We see percentages decrease. And it's not just, well, it's third down. No, because when you look at last year's stats, his third down stats were in par with the rest of his statistics. He was as good on third down as he was anywhere else, if not better on third down. This year, it's unbelievable. And I don't know what the problem is, because it's the same coaches, it's the same scheme, the talent's there. We know it's not an issue with talent, because people might say, well, he's missing Miles Boykin. Well, to be honest with you, Chase Claypool's better than Miles Boykin. And I get it. Claypool last year wasn't as good as Claypool this year, but you got McKinley, you've got Fink, should be even better this year. You have young talent in Keys and Lindsey, and maybe it's the running game, but not really, because on first and second down, he's performing well. I just don't know what it is, and I have to conclude that Ian Book is just, like you said, he gets happy. He has no pressure on. He's not calm on third down. He's got no composure.
No ice in his veins at all.
And the offensive line's doing a good enough job of holding him up. I mean, there was that one play that in the game yesterday where the offensive line probably gave him 15 seconds. Remember, he was running around outside the pocket, inside the pocket, outside the pocket.
Yeah,
he didn't do anything with it.
I was referencing before, where he ran out and then got back into the pocket and reestablished. So I mean, like, they were literally like, it was an ocean of space that he had, and it. Please continue. It's so frustrating.
Well, if you take that scenario, if you can't find an open receiver with that much time, I don't know what the problem is. Like that, I've never seen that much time and not one person get open, and I'm pretty sure someone was open. I love Ian Book. He did a wonderful job for us last year, and he still can. We're not giving up on him. It's just we have diagnosed the issue. It is third down. Third down is his enemy, and he's just not performing at the level. So I'm glad that we're probably the first and only people to kind of, at least podcast, to point this out. It's third down. That's where Ian Book needs to be better. And if we're going to be a playoff team, third down has to get better. I think that's pretty straightforward for everybody. We know the third down statistics anyway. But when you factor in Ian Book's performance on third down, it's a mess. You got to fix it. I don't know if there's anything the coaches can do schematically or play call wise. But Ian, a lot of the season's going to rest on Ian.
Yeah, and to be abundantly transparent and clear, we are big fans of Ian Book. There is no group of guys that would like to be him more successful than anything. I want to see him be a QB selected within the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. I want to see him lead us to the promised land. I want to see him be incredibly successful and make this potentially his final year of his college career, end on a very high note and get us into the playoffs. Right now, on first and second down, he is a playoff caliber QB. On third down, he simply is not. And I think it's not a talent thing. It's not a talent issue. We've seen his talent. You see the talent from 1 and 2, and then when you get to 3, it's the drop off is massive. I think it's all mental. He goes from a gunslinger to basically an option style quarterback that doesn't really know how to pass the ball on third down, and it's frustrating to see the degeneration of talent, especially what are we going to do when it's 3rd and 7 against Clemson or Alabama or Georgia if we do make the playoffs, which again there's still a remarkable chance to do so. I think there's probably still about a 60% chance to make the playoffs. is this just going to be a repeat of last year? Is this going to be, another letdown? And I know, again, I don't want to get negative. I don't want to look down at by any means, because we are the Fighting Irish, and we've been on that rant. We've gone down that territory. It's just this is highly concerning that Coach Kelly needs to find some sort of whispering technique to get it in this kid's mind that, listen, you can be a gunslinger on first, second, and third down. You have to go out there and just fucking let it, just rip the ball, just hum it, and then just trust that the coaches are gonna draw something up that's gonna put the team in a position for success. And I think that's basically it. I think it's all mental at this point.
Yeah, and it's not like it was a problem last year. This is just a clear regression. So it's not talent; it's something else, and I think it needs to get sorted. But if we can move on, do you know what really pisses me off?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Dylan, what pisses you off?
Notre Dame got their 900th win yesterday. Do you want to know why that pisses me off?
Wait, it was their 900th win? I swear they've been there before. Dylan, can you elaborate?
Oh, they have. Notre Dame, of course, was sanctioned a few years ago for self-reporting an academic issue that had nothing to do with a cover-up or a football team. It was just a player and an advisor, and it was self-reported, and it was sanctioned to everyone's disbelief. Notre Dame is 9-21, 326, and 42. So to repeat, we have 921 wins, 326 losses, and 42 draws, which adds up to the number one all-time win percentage at 7.307. It's bullshit. I am annoyed that the NCAA thinks they have the authority to rob us of our history. What really bothers me, and it's a tweet that's going around right now on our account, is that Penn State, who was sanctioned for Jerry Sandusky raping children, had all their wins reinstated a few years ago. It was 100 and some. They were in, I think, the 800s or high 700s, and they lost all of them, and they were replaced. What the fuck? Explain to me, NCAA, how you can justify that, but not something so minor. And that brings up another issue. The point of academic sanctions, because universities will cut corners for athletes. Are you fucking kidding me? Do you think Notre Dame cuts corners for athletes? Notre Dame goes out of their way to add corners for athletes. You
have to have a 3.0 just to be recruited by them.
We have one of the highest academic standards of anyone. So what's the point of sanctioning a team or a school that's already so high? That the point of the sanction is to improve your academic standards. It's fucking Notre Dame. Plus, it was such a minor scandal. It was an issue that was self-reported, and they took away all the wins. They kept our losses, by the way. But there's other academic scandals that don't get sanctioned. So North Carolina had that whole issue of fake classes for their athletes. No sanction there. Again, Penn State covered up a fucking child molester. Those are fine. But Notre Dame self-reports when we lose a big part of our history. It's not only are we second in wins, although someone pointed out that Alabama might be second if you restored their vacated wins, but it's the win percentage. Notre Dame is number one in win percentage. That's our history. That's not Michigan. That's Notre Dame. We took that back when we beat Michigan last year. And here's my point. I'm not a double standard person. I hate double standards. I would apply this for actually everybody. I don't think sanctioning wins makes any sense. If you want to punish the school, fine the school, give a ban to the school, but don't take away history. Those games happened. One of those games that they took away the 2012 season. I'm sorry. I went to the 2012 Notre Dame game against Michigan. I saw that game happen. You can actually see a Canadian flag when Tommy Rees scores in the touchdown in the end zone. That's me. I was at the game.
That's awesome.
We won that fucking game. So I don't support sanctioning anybody. And that applies for our most hated rival, USC. USC won the national championship in 2004. They won that one. Reggie Bush won a Heisman. I'm sorry. They have that Heisman. You vacated wins. I just don't get it. I don't see the point in erasing history. Those games happened. Notre Dame has 921 wins, number one win percentage. And I think Notre Dame fans need to make a bigger stink of this. I think we really need to just hammer the NCAA on just the double standard, the moral bankruptcy of how they do this and put pressure to get these wins reinstated. So that's my little rant.
And
Do you have anything to say on it?
yeah, and trust, you're the future lawyer here, or at least you are in law school, so you'll definitely be able to give more insight on this. But there is a precedence in American law where if you willingly cooperate with the authorities and you give them information that's going to help them establish the rule of law, if you self-report, if you get out ahead of it and said, hey, this thing happened, it's called a plea deal. You can bargain down your punishment. So and the reason they do that is to give you an incentive to give them the information to work with them. So Notre Dame, they found something that was wrong, and they said ahead of time, NCAA, something happened, and we are going out of our way to let you know, and we are handling it, and we want to make sure that we're as honest and forward as possible. And then they still get hit with this, whereas as you described, child molesters go free. It sets a dangerous precedent that there is no benefit whatsoever in self-reporting and coming forth. So now it's just like, yep, well, now it's on the NCAA to come find that information. We're not going to willingly tell anyone, because regardless if we tell you or not, you're going to screw us over anyway. So now it's on you to find that evidence, which can be very difficult, and it's going to require a lot of resources. So you're taking the one tool that this prestigious program, willingly offered you, basically red meat. And not only did you just take the red meat, but you went and ate the trainer. So it's very stupid, very, very, very disingenuous, very disgusting, and just absurd that there's not a single coherent thought that comes out of the main offices of the NCAA. They're honestly just a terrible organization.
Well, yeah, what's the lesson here other than don't tell the truth? You're better off hiding it. There's the message that I'm receiving here is just, it's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense for all the reasons you said. And I even said, even the biggest Notre Dame haters who actually know what happened, I don't even think they could justify it. I mean, it was on First Take with Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith at one point. Both of them aren't Notre Dame fans, and they're both like, this is absurd. How could you do that to a program like Notre Dame who self-reported it while other programs get off scot-free? And that's the point I wanted to make, because I'm a big historian for college football. I love it. I romanticize it, especially Notre Dame's, and it bothers me. So if we can move on here before I break down in tears, let's look at the opponents. It's something we haven't done in a while, but now that we're in that playoff hunt where we need to see what the opponents are up to so we can build a resume, I thought I would just give us a rundown here, and you can kind of give us your thoughts afterwards. So, big away. Game. Navy lost to Memphis. It was a close game going in, I think, to the fourth, and they kind of choked it away. Memphis is a good team. So Navy's 2-1 on the year. We don't get a strength of schedule bump from Navy usually, so I think any kind of winning Navy team coming into South Bend would be fine. Duke played Virginia Tech. Those are two teams that we do play, so it didn't really matter who won. But Duke did, 45-10. Which kind of brings up to your point and P-Wagon's point earlier in the season, where that's kind of the trap game to be worried about is Duke. I actually said Virginia Tech, so maybe I think maybe you guys are right there. So Duke is now 3-1, Virginia Tech is 2-2. Again, these are data points that's going to matter, because I'm sure Clemson plays one, if not two of them. So you kind of want to beat these teams better than Clemson does, because for those of you who watch Clemson,
Alabama opened with Duke.
Yeah, and they destroyed Duke. So that probably isn't. That's kind of maybe out of the picture now. But that's Duke's one loss. So I think there's a good chance Duke could be rated, could be ranked in the top 25 this week. And if they keep winning, they definitely will be, because they were decent last year as well. So yes, moving on to fucking Michigan. I hate them. They destroyed Rutgers 52-0, like they should. Michigan moves to 3-1 on the year. They are 20th right now in the AP. I'm sure they'll stay ranked. I don't see why they wouldn't. Wake Forest and Boston College. It's funny because we usually play both of these teams, if not one of them. And it just so happens the team we do play this year lost. So Wake Forest beat Boston College 27-24. Wake Forest is now 4-0. And Boston College is 3-2. So if Boston College could stay ranked, I think, or not ranked, sorry, but could stay a winning team come that Notre Dame game, I think that would be kind of a win for us as long as these teams stay winning teams. Then USC just totally fucked us and lost to Washington 28-14. Although that's a game they probably shouldn't have won anyway. It's just it would have helped because now they have a bye and then they play Notre Dame. So instead of looking good coming into Notre Dame because that BYU loss, which we all liked at the time, but now fucking hurts us, they're now 3-2. They're third in the Pac-12 South. The good thing is, though, is that because of the Pac-12, as long as they win in the Pac-12 and they win in their division, they could go to the Pac-12 championship game even as an 8-4 team or a 9-3 team. So it sucks that USC couldn't beat Washington for us to make them look better. But USC is not useless to us yet. They still have some value that they could provide, but it isn't a result we really wanted. Stanford, I don't know what's going on in Stanford. They beat Oregon State 31-28. Oregon State is like the worst team in college football, or at least in Power 5 college football.
Yeah.
So Stanford moves to 3-1. This might be the first year Kelly wins in Palo Alto. Surprisingly, that's the place he's never won. So I'm assuming we'll win that one. As for the other teams that we've played, New Mexico lost to Liberty 17-10. New Mexico is not a good team. They moved to 2-2 on the year. Louisville had a bye. They're 2-2, and they're going to play Boston College. So a game that doesn't really matter too much because we play both of them. And then lastly, Bowling Green, they had a bye week as well. A lot of teams have bye weeks against Notre Dame this year. Bowling Green is 1-3. Do you have any kind of thoughts as I run down our opponent's scoreboard for the week?
You pretty much spell it all out, especially going into a little bit more depth in regards to the Pac-12 and those conditions and what USC is up against, and also maybe Stanford can turn it around and get up to 7-8 wins by the time we play them, hopefully. But they are kind of looking all out of sorts. I'd like to just hone in on Michigan. I mean, great win by them. A game that they should have won, exactly as you said. And they put the hammer down. And that's a good thing. I know it's sickening for us to be cheering for that, but we need for them to basically blow out every single person until the big game. And we just need, for the love of God, please just be useful for once and beat that Ohio State football team. You scumbag pieces of Michigan shit. Just win a big game for once. I think, hell of a defense up in Wisconsin, but I don't think Wisconsin has the caliber of players to play, be in the playoff conversation. So if Michigan can just beat Ohio State will take care of Wisconsin at some point. So it's good for them for winning, but for the love of God, just keep it up.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate Michigan plays Penn State the week that they play us, so they could, like USC, lose and look pretty bad coming into the Notre Dame game. Hopefully they win that game, because Michigan, having beaten Penn State with only one loss against Notre Dame, would be pretty big on the schedule. Also, I want to point out that Clemson almost lost to North Carolina this week. It was 2019. North Carolina scored with a few minutes left, went for 2 and failed. The reason I bring that up is because if Clemson loses a game, I don't know how they can be justified to be put into the playoff.
They have a terrible schedule.
They have a terrible schedule. I mean, teams might do it, like the committee might do it anyway because, they're Clemson. They're amazing. But on resume, they have nothing. And that's why the games against Duke, Virginia Tech, Boston College, and Virginia are going to be so important, because if they do lose a game and it comes down to Clemson or Notre Dame, those common opponents will be huge. So we'll keep you guys updated on what our opponents do throughout the weeks and throughout the year, just because I know nobody wants to see how Michigan did, so I'll do that burden for you guys. I fucking hate Michigan. So I'd like to ask you a question, Steve. Have you seen the commercials or the advertisements for the new Joker movie?
Yes, that's with oh my God, why can't I think of the actor?
Joaquin Phoenix, I think.
Yep, yes, I have seen them.
I have a question. Is that movie based on Brian Van Gorder?
Arguably so, because he is an absolute joke.
Well, he's not only a joke, he's a psychopath, and I loved it when he was at Notre Dame, despite how awful he was. But he seemed crazy, and that's kind of the point I was getting to, is he seems like a madman who just laughs to himself in a subway. Um, and that should lead us into our Bowling Green preview to kind of finish off the podcast, because we're up against the Brian Van Gorders. Is he the head coach there or the D coordinator?
I don't think that anyone would be giving him a head coach position. My assumption would be that it's going to be D coordinator.
Okay, well that makes me feel better. So I'll give you guys the quick rundown of Bowling Green. They went 3-9 in 2018, 2-6 in the MAC. This year they're 1-3. And their quarterback, I thought I should start doing quarterback previews like I did last week. His name is Darius Wade. He has the worst QBR in college football. So I hope you guys are feeling a little better now.
That poor, poor soul.
He's going to get murdered in South Bend. So I'll just preview the tail of the tape statistically here. I did a little more than I usually do because I had some time on this beautiful Sunday morning. So I have Bowling Green with 89th in college football in yards per attempt for rushing. So that's 3.9 yards per rush. Notre Dame is 60th with 4.5. In terms of passing yards per attempt, Bowling Green is 125th in college football with 5.6. Notre Dame is 27th in college football with 8.7. Again, Ian Book on first and second downs, those yards per attempt are fine. It's just third down. In terms of passing yards given up per game, Bowling Green has given up 227, which is 74th in college football. Notre Dame has given up 201, which is 40th. I think a lot of that has to do with the Virginia game last week, because otherwise our yards per given up passing wise was very solid. In terms of rushing yards given up, Bowling Green's given up 220, which is 117th in college football. Notre Dame 154 per game, which is 71st. That may seem bad, but remember we were like 120th 2 weeks ago. Going into the Georgia game, so we've actually jumped like 50 spots in 2 weeks because we gave up 4 yards last week. Points per game defensively, Bowling Green's given up 38 points per game, which is 120th in college football. That is very bad. Notre Dame has given up 18.5, which is 27th. Again, very solid, very respectable number, especially when you play Georgia. In terms of points scored per game, Bowling Green's at 18.3. That's 120th in college football again. Notre Dame 38, 21st in college football. So again, that's respectable. We're beating some bad teams when we need to. We put up 35 on Virginia, so although that's a little misleading, it wasn't offensively. But overall, I think Notre Dame's looking pretty sharp there. And then going into our efficiency stats, which I usually give you guys, offensive efficiency, Bowling Green's 128th in college football, which is the third worst. Notre Dame is 34th. Defensive efficiency, Bowling Green is 122nd. Notre Dame is 6th. And overall efficiency, according to ESPN, Bowling Green's 128th versus Notre Dame's 12th. In terms of FPI, which we've talked about again in ESPN stat, I encourage you to look it up or go back to previous pods. Bowling Green's 127th. Notre Dame's 9th. And then S&P Plus, our advanced metric friend, Bowling Green's 128th. Again, third worst in college football. And Notre Dame is 22nd. They actually fell 10 spots because of how poor the offense was. Last week, they were 12th. But the point here really is that Notre Dame is consistently high in terms of efficiency. They're 9th FPI, 12th overall in ESPN, and 22nd in S&P. And Bowling Green is awful. They're consistently in the low 120s, which is the bottom of college football. So statistically, if you could keep with me there, Notre Dame good, Bowling Green bad.
I'm going to give you a very in-depth preview of my exact thoughts of how this Notre Dame versus Bowling Green game is going to go. And Dylan, I'd like for you to just close your eyes for a minute. If you're the listener, if you're the fourth horseman and one of our listeners, just close your eyes for a minute. The sun is out. It's beating down on your shoulders. The smell of the South Carolina low country smells like brackish water along with some ragweed. What's that over there? Is that an alligator? Hi, Mr. Alligator. He's just hanging out. He's not being too aggressive. There's the nice firm fairway underneath your feet. You dig in your golf spikes. You're about 172 yards away. You got a wind from left to right, so you know you got to put a little bit of a baby draw on this one. So you pull your 7-iron, you pay attention to that ball, make sure you got your eye on it, body's in alignment, take one deep breath, and just take a nice, smooth swing. Wow, the ball sails right into the air, cutting across that low country sky. You see the Calabogie Sound in the background, and the ball just drops right in the center of the green, and you're putting for birdie. And that's my plans for this week. I'm going to be at the Sea Pines Resort down in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, playing some golf, playing 6 rounds of golf in 4 days. And that includes 2 rounds of golf on Saturday. So I'll be streaming the game on my phone because I don't miss a game. Everyone knows that. But that's my exact thoughts on how this game is going to go.
I did not expect that at all. I was expecting some kind of eagle to come in and fuck up your day, which was symbolic to Brian Van Gorder's defense.
If we were going more specific to my actual golf game, it wouldn't have landed. I would have actually sculled it, and it would have gone about 125 yards, but also 30 yards left. Went out of bounds, would have had to drop. That's a penalty stroke. Then I miss the green. Then I have to chip on, then 2-putt. Then we get a 7 on a par 4, keep it moving. However, we're going with the birdie in this scenario.
Fair enough. I think you kind of echo a point, though, that this is not a game to worry about. This is not a game we should really care about. I listed off a lot of statistics, and I realized I did a lot of work for no reason because, Bowling Green is bad and Notre Dame is good. If I'm going to give you a score, this team is worse than New Mexico. You guys have to keep that in mind. In most of these statistics, they are worse than New Mexico. So I'm going to say that Notre Dame's going to win 69-6. That's a 63-point victory. You got to beat them better than you beat New Mexico. I don't know what the spread is, but surely it's not going to be 63. So bet the cover there. Bowling Green is bad by almost every metric. Notre Dame is not perfect, but a lot better. This game's at home. Brian Van Gorder is going to get heckled a lot because, again, his defense. His time as defensive coordinator was really unfortunate. Notre Dame kind of cost us, I think, a few years of competitiveness. Although I don't hate him, I thought he was kind of entertaining at least, and his son Montgomery was great at Notre Dame as the kick holder. But yeah, overall, Steve's going to be chilling on a golf course. You guys are all going to have a good time. Please don't freak out this week if we don't score on the first drive or if we give up a few first downs. We're going to take care of them very easily. This should be an absolute blowout, and then we will head into Southern Cal week. Like Steve, I'm actually going to be gone too. I'm returning to my alma mater, the University of Ottawa. We're playing our big rivalry game next week. It's called the Panda Game. It's the biggest game in Canadian university football. I'm going to be attending that in the morning, and then I should try to catch the game somewhere, maybe at a bar, stream it on campus somewhere afterwards. But like I said, not a game to worry about. I hope everybody has a really good weekend because the next one's the big one. That's when we play the Southern Cal Trojans, and that's when the season really, really gets hot. So I think that's it for me. Steve, you have any last thoughts?
That's pretty much it. Obviously, we know it's going to be a blowout. Now, 63-0. That's my assumption. Yeah, the only closing thought that I have is on a serious note and a little bit of a sad one. Sean Crawford, kind of an ugly arm injury. I don't know if it was a hyperextension or some sort of dislocation or possibly even a break. He's gone through 2 ACLs and an Achilles. He's a 6th-year senior because of his injuries, because one was a medical redshirt. So, incredibly talented. He made it back onto the field this year after battling through an insane amount of adversity from an injury standpoint. And to see him go down in that game was kind of a heartbreak. And hopefully this is something that can be healed in 2-3 weeks. Hopefully he's back for the USC game. And in an ideal world, maybe it's just a stinger. But he was wrapped up and put in a sling. So I know I speak for myself, for Patty, and for Dylan, when obviously all of us want as quick and as well as a recovery as can possibly happen for Sean Crawford, because he is just a great individual and a senior leader on this team. So I mean that's pretty much it. We know where we're at in terms of being 3-1, looking forward, still playoff hopes. There's some improvements to be made. We covered Ian Book's downfalls or kryptonite, and hopefully that's something that can improve. And now we have a nice, easy opponent to really hone in and focus on getting his confidence up. And that's pretty much it.
Yep, exactly that. Let's fix out the mistakes in Ian Book's game. Let's get Phil Jerkovich in. Let's even get Clark in because he can get 4 games and keep his red shirt. It's going to be that kind of game. Follow us on Twitter for Horsemen Pod. We go under the name for Horsemen Podcast. Instagram account coming soon.
I keep forgetting to make that, but it's coming soon, I promise.
Everything's good. I want to give a shout out to our new listeners. Last week was one of, if not our best week ever as a podcast. We're growing. We thank you. We appreciate it. Give us feedback. We always take fan questions. We appreciate all the interaction because we do this for you guys, to interact with you guys. Our Twitter account is growing excellently. Follow us on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, that's all right. You can find another way to contact us. We appreciate you listening to us, and we're looking forward to growing with you as this season goes along. So, again, thank you. Best of luck to all of you and to Sean Crawford in his recovery. Go Irish.
Go Irish.